5,000 years ago, deep in the scorching plains of what is now southern Iraq, a civilization pressed symbols into wet clay. They recorded everything: laws, dreams, prayers, warnings. Then they vanished. The tablets stayed behind, buried, broken, and unreadable for millennia. Over 500,000 of them sit in museums right now. Most have never been translated, but that is changing fast. In the last 2 years, artificial intelligence has started reading what humans couldn't. And what these tablets say about us, about where we came from, about what the Sumerians believed we were made for, is enough to make you rethink everything you thought you knew about human history. One word on a tablet changed the entire direction of this story. But we're going to hide that word for now. You'll see question marks on screen where it belongs. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what it says. And trust me, once you hear it, you won't forget it. What if the oldest civilization on Earth left us a message we were never meant to read? What if it took 5,000 years and a machine to finally hear it? Because that is exactly what is happening right now. Ancient clay tablets, cracked, weathered, buried under centuries of sand, are finally starting to speak again. And they are not whispering bedtime stories. They are revealing truths about human origins, divine hierarchies, and warnings that feel disturbingly relevant today. The last entry on our list is the one that will shake you the most. Let's get into it. 9. The sheer scale of what we haven't read. Before we talk about what was found, let's talk about what's been sitting in silence. There are over 500,000 cuneiform tablets stored in museums across the world: London, Baghdad, Berlin, Philadelphia, New York. Most of them have never been fully translated, not because no one cared, because no one could. Cuneiform, the oldest known writing system on Earth, is brutally difficult to decode. Each sign can have up to 25 different readings depending on context. The wedge shapes shift meaning across time periods, regions, and even individual scribes. Only a few hundred people alive today can read it with any real fluency. That means the vast majority of these tablets, these 5,000-year-old records of trade, war, religion, medicine, law, and myth, have been sitting in storage drawers like sealed envelopes, waiting for someone to open them. And now someone finally has, not a person, a machine. So what happens when artificial intelligence starts reading the oldest mail on Earth? You are about to find out. 8. How AI learned to read cuneiform. You cannot just point a camera at a clay tablet and expect a translation. Cuneiform is not ink on paper. It is three-dimensional. Tiny wedge-shaped impressions pressed into wet clay by a sharpened reed over 5 millennia ago. The depth of a mark, the angle of incidence, the weathering of the surface, all of it matters. Traditional optical character recognition, the kind that scans printed text, fails miserably here. That is why in 2023, researchers from Tel Aviv University and Ariel University built a neural machine translation model specifically trained on Akkadian cuneiform, one of the 2 major languages written in this script. The other is Sumerian. The system works like a specialized version of Google Translate. Feed it a transliterated cuneiform text, and it outputs English. The results were fast, accurate, and for formal texts like royal decrees and ritual instructions, remarkably precise. But for literary texts, things got strange. The AI occasionally hallucinated, generating translations completely unrelated to the source. Which raises a question. When a machine reads a 5,000-year-old tablet and produces words that don't match, is it making an error? Or is it picking up on something we haven't recognized yet? In 2025, researchers from Cornell University and Tel Aviv University pushed even further with a system called ProtoSnap. Using generative AI, it aligned digital prototypes of cuneiform characters with the actual strokes found on tablets, pixel by pixel. The accuracy on rare and damaged signs shattered every previous record. And in February 2026, a team at UC Berkeley showcased new neural translation models built on Meta's No Language Left Behind framework, closing the gap between ancient Sumerian and modern English faster than anyone thought possible. The machines are learning, and they are learning fast. 7. What the tablets say about human creation. This is where things get uncomfortable. Across dozens of Sumerian texts, a consistent theme appears. Humans were not born. They were made. The tablets describe a deliberate act of creation carried out by divine beings, using a combination of clay and blood. The details vary from text to text, but the core narrative holds. The gods grew tired of labor. They needed workers, so they designed a creature to do the work for them. That creature was humanity. In the Ahterahasis epic, one of the oldest creation narratives ever recorded, a god is sacrificed. His flesh and blood are mixed with clay by a divine figure, and from that mixture, humans are molded into existence. The purpose is explicit. Humans were created to carry the burden of the gods, to dig canals, to harvest grain, to build temples, not as partners, not as children, as tools. For centuries, scholars treated these texts as poetry, metaphor, mythology dressed in literary clothing. But when AI began cross-referencing multiple tablets at scale, identifying repeated phrases, structural parallels, and consistent terminology across thousands of texts, a picture emerged that was harder to dismiss. The language was not metaphorical. It was procedural, step by step, ingredient by ingredient, as if someone had written an instruction manual for building a species. 6. The Anunnaki and the War over Humanity. You have probably heard the name Anunnaki. It gets thrown around in conspiracy circles, usually alongside aliens and pyramids. But here is the truth that the tablets actually contain, and it is stranger than fiction. The Anunnaki, in Sumerian texts, were the ruling class of gods. Not aliens, not visitors. Divine beings who governed the cosmos through a rigid hierarchy. At the top sat Anu, the sky god. Below him, Enlil controlled the wind and the earth. And then there was Enki, the god of wisdom and water, the one most closely associated with humanity's creation. The tablets describe a structured divine society with councils, debates, and disagreements. These were not all-knowing, all-loving deities. They argued, they competed, they made mistakes, and their biggest disagreement was about what to do with humans. Enki, the creator, is described across multiple texts as the father of humanity. He gave humans reproduction, speech, and the capacity for wisdom. In some texts, he warned a mortal named Ziusudra, the Sumerian Noah, about the coming flood. He broke divine law to save the species he had made. Enlil, by contrast, embodied control. When humans grew too numerous, too noisy, too independent, Enlil called for their destruction. The flood narrative was Enlil's solution to the problem of human expansion. But here is the twist. AI-assisted translations of fragmentary texts are revealing that this conflict was not a one-time event. It was ongoing. Repeated references across different tablet collections suggest that the tension between freedom and control, between empowering humanity and restraining it, was a central theme of Sumerian theology. Not just a story told once, a debate that lasted centuries, carved into clay again and again. Two gods, two visions, and humanity caught in the middle. 5. The Flood. That predates the Bible. Everyone knows about the biblical flood. Noah, the ark, the animals, the rainbow. But few people realize that the story predates the Bible by at least 1,000 years. The Sumerian flood narrative, preserved on tablets from the city of Nippur, tells of a righteous king named Ziusudra, who was warned by the god Enki that the divine council had voted to destroy humanity with a catastrophic deluge. Ziusudra built a boat, survived the flood, and was granted immortality by the gods. Sound familiar? It should. The parallels with the later Babylonian version in the Atrahasis and the even later account in Genesis are unmistakable. But what AI is adding to the picture is context. By cross-referencing flood-related fragments from different cities and time periods, researchers are discovering variations in the narrative that were previously unknown. Differences in which gods voted for destruction. Differences in what was saved. Differences in the warnings given and the conditions imposed after the waters receded. These are not just different tellings of the same story. They are different theological arguments, embedded in narrative form, about whether humanity deserved to survive. 4. The Epic of Gilgamesh keeps growing. By 2024, the Electronic Babylonian Library had matched lines from the Epic of Gilgamesh to text from over 1,500 tablet fragments. Before AI, scholars had managed to link about 5,000 pieces total across decades of manual work. Now the number is climbing fast, and new scenes from the oldest story ever written are surfacing. Passages where Enkidu pleads with Gilgamesh not to kill Humbaba. Details about their journey to see the god Enlil in the city of Nippur. And one newly identified tablet, dating from 130 years before Christ, proving that the poem was still being copied and shared thousands of years after it first appeared. The AI even uncovered new vocabulary. In recounting preparations for the Great Flood, the character Utanapishtim describes how he lavished the ark builders with food and drink. That word, lavished, had never been found in any previous version of the text. In 2025, the same platform reassembled a lost 250-line hymn to Babylon from 30 scattered fragments. A poem that Babylonian children once memorized in school, praising their city's architecture, its priestesses, and the life-giving Euphrates. No scholar knew it existed until AI stitched the pieces together. The oldest stories in human history are not finished. They are still being written, one recovered fragment at a time. 3. What was hidden under the translations? Here is something most people do not realize about Sumerian cuneiform. The same script was used for multiple languages. When Sumerian died as a spoken language around 2000 BCE, the Babylonians and Assyrians kept using cuneiform for their own Akkadian language. But they also continued copying Sumerian texts, the way medieval monks copied Latin. This means many of the tablets we have are not originals. They are copies of copies. And AI is now detecting something remarkable in those copies. Subtle changes, shifts in word choice, additions, omissions. By comparing versions of the same text produced centuries apart, machine learning models are identifying how scribes edited, reinterpreted, and sometimes censored the material they were reproducing. Some flood narratives gained detail, some creation myths lost paragraphs. And some references to the gods' intentions toward humanity were softened, as if later scribes found the original language too harsh to preserve unchanged. What were they softening? What did the originals say that later generations thought was too dangerous to repeat? AI is uncovering the edits, and the edits are as revealing as the texts themselves. 2. Eridu and the Blueprint for Civilization. Eridu, the oldest city in the world according to Sumerian tradition, the place where kingship first descended from heaven. The tablets say civilization did not evolve gradually. It was given, bestowed from above. The gods chose Eridu as the first point of contact between the divine and the human. And from that city, everything else radiated outward. Agriculture, writing, architecture, law. AI translations of Eridu-related texts are filling in gaps that scholars have debated for decades. New fragments, matched by machine learning, describe the founding of the city in language that is both mythological and administrative. Lists of resources, descriptions of irrigation systems, references to divine oversight of construction. The picture that emerges is not one of primitive people slowly figuring out how to grow crops. It is a picture of sudden, structured development, as if a blueprint was delivered and implemented. Scholars are careful not to overinterpret, but the data is there, pressed into clay, and AI is reading it faster than any human team could. 1. The word we hid. Remember those question marks at the beginning? The hidden word? Here it is. Slaves. Across the oldest Sumerian creation texts, the term used to describe humanity's intended role is not children, not worshippers, not partners. The functional term, repeated across multiple tablets in multiple cities across multiple centuries, describes humans as a labor class. Created to serve, designed to work, engineered from divine material and earthly clay to carry the burden that the gods no longer wish to bear. That is the word AI keeps finding when it processes the oldest creation narratives in human history. Not in one tablet, not in one city, across the entire surviving corpus. The consistency is what makes it terrifying, because it means this was not one poet's dark imagination. It was the founding belief of the civilization that invented writing itself. Now, does that mean it is true? No, these are myths, cultural narratives, products of a world that saw divine authority in every rainstorm and read omens in every sheep liver. But myths are not random. They encode what a society believes about itself. And the society that gave humanity its first written words, its first cities, its first laws, its first literature, also gave us the earliest recorded belief that we were built to serve something greater than ourselves. AI did not create that idea. It just found it, buried in clay, waiting 5,000 years for something smart enough to read it. And now, you have read it too. History is not done talking. The tablets are still out there. 500,000 of them, most unread. And every month, machines get better at listening. So the question is not whether AI will decode more of them. It will. The question is whether we are ready for what they say. Don't forget to like this video, drop a comment with your thoughts, and subscribe if you haven't already. Trust me, it only gets deeper from here.